92% of people who set major goals in their lives never actually achieve them. And the number one reason is not a lack of talent, not a lack of resources, and not bad luck. It is the inability to handle failure when it shows up. And it always shows up. In the next 10 minutes, you are going to discover exactly why failure destroys most people while it actually fuels the best performers in the world. You will learn the specific mental frameworks that champions use to process setbacks, the science behind why your brain reacts to failure the way it does, and the one counterintuitive truth about failing that most self-help gurus refuse to say out loud because it completely dismantles the motivational content they sell you every single day. For most of human history, failure carried a death sentence. Not a metaphorical one, a literal one. If you failed at a hunt, your tribe went hungry. If you failed to read the weather, you froze. The human brain evolved inside that environment, and it never fully updated. That ancient wiring is precisely why failure still feels catastrophic today, even when the stakes are nothing close to survival. Your nervous system cannot fully distinguish between losing a job and being chased by a predator. The emotional response is wired into your biology, which means the shame, the paralysis, and the fear that follow failure are not signs of weakness. They are signs that you are human. The Stoic philosophers understood this thousands of years ago. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his personal journals that the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. He was not writing a motivational poster. He was writing notes to himself as he ran an empire, dealt with military defeats, survived plagues, and buried his own children. His philosophy was built on real failure, not theoretical resilience. Modern psychology has finally caught up to what Aurelius knew intuitively. Stanford psychologist Carol Dweck spent decades studying how people respond to difficulty, and she discovered two fundamentally different orientations. People with a fixed mindset believe their abilities are static. When they fail, it confirms their worst fear, that they simply are not good enough. People with a growth mindset believe abilities are developed through effort. When they fail, they extract information. The failure becomes data, not a verdict. Here's what makes this finding genuinely important. Dweck's research showed that the mindset difference is not about optimism or positive thinking. It is about interpretation. Two people can experience the exact same failure. One walks away crushed and avoids the challenge forever. The other walks away with a specific lesson and a revised strategy. The external event was identical. The internal processing was completely different. That processing gap is the entire ballgame. So what does that processing actually look like in practice? Champions use a framework that psychologists call deliberate reflection. It is not rumination, which is the toxic replay loop most people get stuck in. Rumination focuses on the feeling. Deliberate reflection focuses on the mechanism. After a failure, the champion asks three precise questions. What specifically went wrong? What did I not anticipate? What would I do differently with the knowledge I have now? That last question is the critical one because it forces your brain forward instead of backward. Michael Jordan was cut from his high school basketball team. That story gets told constantly, but what never gets mentioned is what he did immediately after. He did not tell himself he was not a basketball player. He identified the specific weaknesses that cost him the spot, trained obsessively to correct them, and used the humiliation as directional fuel rather than as a final judgment. He later said that the moment he was cut was the moment he became the player he would eventually become. The failure did not set him back. It set the direction. But here is what nobody talks about. The research on post-failure recovery consistently shows that the speed of recovery matters far more than the absence of negative emotion. Champions still feel the devastation. They still feel the embarrassment, the self-doubt, and the anger. The difference is that their recovery window is dramatically shorter. They allow themselves a defined period to feel the full weight of what happened, and then they deliberately shift into analysis mode. They do not skip the emotion. They schedule it. Psychologist Martin Seligman, who founded the field of positive psychology, identified something called explanatory style. It describes how people explain bad events to themselves. People who struggle with failure tend to explain setbacks as permanent, pervasive, and personal. Permanent means it will always be this way. Pervasive means it affects everything. Personal means it is entirely my fault and reflects who I am. That combination is psychologically lethal. Champions instinctively or deliberately use the opposite style. They see failure as temporary, specific, and contextual. It happened this time, in this situation, for these identifiable reasons. That framing preserves both self-worth and agency simultaneously. Thomas Edison failed over 10,000 times trying to develop a working light bulb. When a reporter asked him how it felt to fail that many times, he said he had not failed 10,000 times. He had successfully discovered 10,000 ways that did not work. That answer is not just a clever quote. It is a precise demonstration of explanatory style in action. He classified each failed attempt as a data point collected, not a personal loss suffered. That is not denial. That is strategic interpretation. Now here is the part that makes most people genuinely uncomfortable. The relationship between failure and success is not just correlated. It is causative. A study analyzing the career trajectories of scientists published in the journal Nature found that early career failure actually increased the likelihood of long-term success compared to early career success. Scientists who struggled and failed early on, but continued anyway, ultimately published more impactful research than those who succeeded immediately. The researchers called this the desirable difficulty effect. The struggle itself built a more robust set of problem-solving skills, a higher tolerance for ambiguity, and a deeper understanding of the domain. This means that protecting yourself from failure is not playing it safe. It is actively sabotaging your long-term development. Every time you avoid a challenge because you might fail, you are not preserving your success rate. You are narrowing your capability set and shrinking your future. Brené Brown's research on vulnerability adds another dimension here. Her data showed that the people with the highest sense of personal worthiness, what she called wholehearted living, were not people who had failed less. They were people who had developed what she called shame resilience. They could feel the sting of failure without allowing it to become a story about their fundamental value as a person. That separation between performance and identity is not easy to build, but it is the foundational skill underneath every other resilience strategy. The practical application of all this research comes down to 3 specific habits you can start building right now. The first is the post-failure debrief. Within 48 hours of any significant setback, sit down and write out what happened, what you learned, and what your next move is. Writing it out forces the analytical part of your brain to engage rather than letting the emotional centers run unchecked. The second habit is redefining your success metrics. Stop measuring yourself only by outcomes, which are often partially outside your control, and start tracking effort quality, decision quality, and lessons accumulated. Champions measure their inputs as fiercely as their outputs. The third habit is building a failure portfolio. Actively document your failures and what they taught you. Over time, this portfolio becomes your most powerful evidence that you are learning, adapting, and building genuine expertise. It transforms the narrative from someone who keeps failing to someone who keeps growing. The champions of every field are not the people who never fail. They are the people who have failed more than anyone around them and used each failure as installation material for their next attempt. Jordan, Edison, Rowling, Musk, Winfrey, pick any name associated with extraordinary achievement, and you will find behind it an extraordinary catalog of failure, rejection, and loss. The failure was not despite their success. It was the infrastructure underneath it. You will fail again. Before you go, if you learned something valuable today, hit that like button right now. Subscribe to Get Up Life for a brand new video every single day. We will see you in the next one.